So to close up, night, buddy. I'll be there in a minute. Sorry, toddler. So to close off, at the end to end this workshop, I kind of want to loop back around in a similar fashion to the affirmations at the beginning. 10 things to remember while organizing. These are from Krasner's Going For It, How to Run a Grassroots Election Campaign and Win. So again, this was specifically about grassroots elections, but really these top 10 things can be applied to community organizing, to really any aspect of what we do. So a lot of times when, thinking about grassroots organizing, you're going to have to take a source and a little bit out of context and adapt it to your needs. But 10 things to remember in organizing. You will make mistakes. Do your best to correct them and move on. I repeat, you will make mistakes, right? We're forging a new path. We're doing things differently. And that means there are going to be missteps. But what we can't do is get in our heads. We can't quit because that didn't work out. We have to say, why didn't that work out? What did we do wrong? What did we miss, right? In my experience, most of the time when something doesn't go to plan, we know why. If you don't know why, you need to really dig on that, right? What did we miss? Why were we blindsided by this? Because it's showing a very big blinder in your organizing, most likely. So you will make mistakes, correct it and move on, right? Chin up, get up off the mat and go back for the next round. Assume nothing, follow through on everything, check and double check. If something's supposed to happen, don't necessarily assume that it will. Oftentimes we kind of let people work in their silos and we assume that they're fine, but they may not be fine, right? So check in, as you're coming up, like, hey, how's the press release going? And they may say, fine, ready to go out tomorrow. And then that's great. And they may say, man, I'm really struggling. My kid was sick. I've worked, 70 hours at work this week because of a looming project, and I'm really struggling. And then to jump in, or they could say, hey, I'm really struggling. I've just got writer's block on this. I've had that, right? Where I'm like, I just can't write this thing right now. I don't know why, but I can't. Can someone help me, right? But people aren't always comfortable asking why. So make sure you're reaching out, right? Double check with people. Hey, how are things going? Make sure that people aren't just left in their silos and assumed to be okay. Provide that, broad-based support throughout your organizations. Make decisions. Greens, make decisions. Don't agonize and don't wait for a perfect solution. I've seen too many great ideas pulled apart to the point of just dying because of people wanted that perfect solution, and it doesn't exist. Perfection is, I guess in some ways a noble goal to strive for, but it's setting yourself up for failure, right? So make decisions. Don't agonize about it. Move forward. No, you're going to make mistakes. Maybe that decision was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't. As long as you learn from it and move forward, you're good. Campaigning is a social process. People like to be asked for help and thanked for help, right? It should be fun, right? It's hard work. Political organizing, community organizing is exhausting, thankless, hard work. But you should be having some fun. You should be having some enjoyment. You should be getting some, something from the relationships as you're building. It's a social process. Don't forget that. In small races, the personal will usually dominate. Issues matters more as size of the campaign grows, right? And this is why when we talked about relational organizing, you start by asking people how things are with them, right? What are they thinking? And then you help make those connections, right? Because it's got the thing that will motivate them is most likely a personal thing, right? That's how you find out that, oh, my neighbor is going to be ride or die. When it comes to universal health care, because they watched a family member, just go into devastating debt at the end of their life. If you didn't have those conversations and build that trust, you might not know that, to know like, hey, you should be coming out to our Medicare for All events, because I know you really care about this. So if personal is going to dominate in smaller races and smaller organizing activities, then you've got to do the work to be personal, right? To know those things. The campaign that keeps on the offensive without being offensive will usually win. Really important when doing anything. We live in a dynamic and chaotic world. And while we must respond to it in some way, we also can't let it derail us, right? So we don't need to, while hot takes and edgelord stuff will get you lots of reactions on Twitter, retweets don't vote, likes don't vote. Putting out a positive vision about how to, realize real change is what will actually inspire people. And so, keep that in mind, that, you need to keep moving forward on your goals. You need to put that positive vision out there. And you need to make sure you're not derailed and pulled into the mud. All politics is local. Translate issues into local terms. Like I said earlier, what climate action means in different places is different. Even within the same state. Where I'm from in Illinois, when we were fighting about fracking years ago, all the fracking is going to happen downstate, but 80% of the population lives upstate. And they didn't care about fracking because it wasn't a local issue. And that's why we couldn't get a moratorium passed, right? The large environmental groups were all based out of metropolitan areas that weren't in danger of fracking. And they frankly didn't care what happened to the rural folks. It wasn't on top on their issue. They were more worried about, coal ash and things like that coming from plants. They were more worried about the 22,000 tons of nuclear waste that Illinois has with nowhere to store, right? Because those are closer issues to their home. So make sure we're translating issues back in. If you want to talk about the climate, how does that work? How does that manifest in your community? If you want to talk about police brutality, how does that manifest in your community? Make sure that you are taking these broader themes that we all talk about and that are so important to us and making them real to people in their community. And then one campaign does not make or break a movement. A losing campaign can provide the basis for winning the next time. This is absolutely true, whether it be electoral or just movement organizing, right? You learn from those failures, right? You learn and fail. I don't even want to use the term failure. We have to recalibrate what success means when grassroots organizing, right? That first race, maybe getting to 5%. And so in Illinois, if you can get your partisan race to 5%, that means you're recognized on the ballot for the next election. That means you have to collect way less signatures, and you just made it easier for you to campaign the next time, right? That's a victory. That first 5% threshold is a victory. And on the federal level, it means that if our presidential candidate gets 5%, that we get federal funding for our primary process in the next election, right? That's millions of dollars that we don't have right now. It may not even be a threshold like that. It may be, hey, that campaign doubled our membership, right? And so now we're ready to take that campaign on more seriously next time around, or we're ready to pivot to this campaign that we might have a better chance at. One campaign doesn't make or break a movement. These are stepping stones. These are learning opportunities. These are, just moving down the path. Campaigns should be fun. Look out for each other and avoid burnout. I talked about that a little earlier. And then finally, a campaign is a chance to show who you are and what you are in favor of. Use every opportunity to show how our grassroots campaigns are different from politics as usual and the two major parties, right? The majority of Medicare for All advocates in this country voted in 2020 for someone who said they would veto Medicare for All. The majority of people who wanted peace voted for a half-century long imperialist, right? And that's because we have in America what I call a negative voting culture in our mainstream politics. People tend to vote against something rather than for it. And Eugene Debs said he'd rather vote for what he wants and not get it than vote for what he doesn't want and get it. And I think that's a very apt quote to accompany this last bullet point. The idea that when we're running these campaigns, when we're organizing in our community, we need to be putting forward a positive, pro our issues message and agenda. We've seen the results of lesser evilism by looking at our mainstream politics. We've seen what voting against your interests because you really don't like the other guy gets us. So, that's something we need to keep in mind as we're orienting our campaigns, whether they're electoral or community based. And